Hi everyone, my name is Amanda Rose. I had to check that's my name. I'm the founder of Western Sydney Women and Entrepreneurial and Small Business Women Australia. So I'll keep it simple. Is that simple enough? Okay.
Thank you. Mark Grimston is my name. I'm the Economic Development Manager at Wollongong City Council. Great to be here. And I think a big part of Wollongong's journey has been over the last few decades the fact that it has had to diversify substantially, which has meant that we have as a region have had to work hard and collaborate. Thank you.
Kath Hume, founder of Workforce Transformations and host of the Reimagining Workforce podcast. Very driven by the fact that I believe that work plays such a significant part of our lives and really does determine the quality of our lives. And I have always been driven. I can distinctly remember the day when I sat in an economics classroom and I was told that you can't really move outside of your social class and things are predetermined. That I remember thinking that is absolutely not going to sit well with me, and I'm going to commit the rest of my career really to changing that, enabling and empowering people to take control of their own lives and careers so that they can really lead meaningful, fulfilling lives and have really good quality.
I think I used to teach that in modern history in Soviet Russia. Anyway, that's
Well said. I'm Ty, everyone. Ty Christopher, Director, Energy Futures Network at the University of Wollongong, and here to talk about very much the Energy Futures Skills Centre and what we're building at the University of Wollongong, thanks to a $10 million grant to the university from the federal government and another $3 million to Wollongong TAFE. So happy to expand on that. And just to be sure, because I'm doing a job for you here, you can pay me later, by the way. Up there in the cheap seats, wave your hand if you can hear me. Are we all good there? Okay, cool. No worries.
okay. So thank you for that. The first question, I guess, is we've heard a lot about different skills. We've seen different charts, and Kath and others have presented to us some of the information coming out at the moment from different groups like Jobs and Skills Australia and other places. What do each of you think is the most urgent skills gap that we have? It can be a skill or a cluster of skills. Nanda?
Can I throw a spanner in the works? I'm going to say it's the opportunity gap. So not everyone has the same opportunity as the next person. And I think what can happen, and I've been on plenty of panels and spoken plenty of events where they talk about highly paid, highly skilled jobs, and that's the future, and it's creating a two-tiered society without realising it. So I think we need to make sure the opportunity gap is filled first, where every single person in this country, if they want to do something or something excites them, that they can literally go for it and have the opportunities to do so, have the same resources, be provided with the same connections, and be able to say, you know what, I want to do that, because that was me. So I'm the first to go to university on both sides of my family. My mum pretty much said, can't be that hard, others do it. And she literally can't be that hard, me into 6 businesses. But just that, if I didn't have my mum saying that to me and saying, go out and find it, I wouldn't have done it. I didn't have the support. Not everyone has that support. So I'll extend it by saying the opportunity gap, and then if we have the power to facilitate that for someone else who wouldn't normally have it, we need to do so.
Thank you. Well, it's a pretty broad question. There's no doubt and we're at the moment got our new economic development strategy out on exhibition at the moment. The main reason it was the previous strategy was endorsed in 2019, and we set a jobs target of 10,500 additional jobs created in the Wollongong LGA over a 10-year period. To put that in context, in the previous decade we created 5,000 jobs and net additional jobs. And part of the challenge in that decade, 10 years to 2018, there were still layoffs in heavy industry and BlueScope, etc., etc. The good news is we actually achieved the 10,500 jobs in the first 5 years of the strategy. So we're just then needed to reset and retarget. And so that's, and it's interesting, Wollongong, as I said, in the last few decades as a city and as an economy, it's been a bit of a challenge, but in the last 5 years, our economic indicators outperformed the state of New South Wales on all indicators. So it's really been a turnaround. Subsequently, there's skill shortages in many instances and many areas. I think one of our challenges in some of our traditional industries, because for so long they've been downsizing and shifting and stuff like that, that has meant that those industries aren't seen as being attractive or aren't seen as being as having long-term opportunities. Because of the fact that we've actually been downsizing for a long period of time. So that's definitely a situation here in the Illawarra.
So is that a perception gap?
Absolutely, and also that if you've been telling communities for a long period of time that we're downsizing, then you're not, mum and dad aren't going to think to their son or daughter, that's an industry that you would really look to, even though there are really great opportunities in some of those industries today still. So that's certainly a unique situation for here in Wollongong and the Illawarra.
Okay, so we've got an opportunity gap, we've got sort of a perception gap. What are the gaps?
I think a problem-solving gap. So the ability to look at problems and actually go and attack them. And Amanda, I love talking to you before about the way you just say, well, if there's a problem, I'm going to just address that, and giving people the confidence and the skills that sit underneath that to be able to do it, because I do not think we will ever run out of problems, and so that's always going to be a valuable skill set.
So is that a confidence gap then as well?
I think I would break problem solving down into lots of things. Data analysis, curiosity, creativity and courage, I always think. Communication skills, being able to collaborate, there's lots of things that fall into that, but I think really ultimately it's all about problem solving and how we go about that. But confidence would be one thing too. You're not going to give it a go if you don't have confidence that it's going to lead to a positive outcome, I don't think.
I hate going last after this. D, all of the above, he said in a multiple choice exam. But one of the things that I see as well is I do think, especially when it comes to STEM education, STEM careers and STEM encouragement, we do still as a society consistently discourage and or ignore the talent in 50% of our population. Of my own personal journey, I'm an engineer, my wife's an accountant. You don't escape the Christopher family without a STEM literacy sort of thing. My own daughter, who was and is now a microbiologist by profession, keeping her engaged with and encouraged to pursue STEM studies and a STEM-based career, given that family background and given the fact that she was even going to a local selective high school, was still a huge struggle due to the cultural issues and due to the norms that we have in society. I've been an electrical engineer, I'm not an academic by profession, in the power industry for 40 years. When I started, there was a huge gender imbalance. It's been talked about. I did what I could when I was in the industry to recruit accordingly. Here we are, 4 decades later. Guess what? Same. So I still think we're ignoring half the really, really smart people in our society, and that's all the ones that ain't blokes.
So we'll start with you again, Ty, there for this one, which is then what's an example of a successful but rapid upskilling initiative that you've seen lately?
One of the most successful ones, and I'll try and keep this as short as I can, one of the things that I think is a real challenge for us as citizens in the community, but in particular I see this in the SME segment of industry and business, small to medium enterprises, is energy literacy. Small to medium enterprises are usually by definition very lean, very well run businesses that are good at what they do. Energy literacy, understanding the energy provenance or even the energy footprint of their own business and what they could do to decarbonise or improve their financial position, is very often not a skill set that they possess. So one of the solutions that I have seen has been the implementation not of multi-year vocational or, dare I say, multi-year tertiary qualification levels at the university, but rather short courses, the so-called micro-credentials. What's the short, sharp information that people need to go from where they are to have enough knowledge to be an informed player in industry that they're in at the moment. So one of the successes is in the building well, they're based there, not too far down the road from here, the Sustainable Buildings Research Centre. Through the Australian Power Quality Research Centre, they offer these short professional development courses. They're 1 or 2 day courses, and they're about lifting energy literacy for SMEs. They are exceedingly well attended and consistently oversubscribed whenever they're offered. In fact, to the shame of the university, the only thing that limits how often and how much they can be offered is our own staff cutbacks and financial constraints at the university. We could be offering them twice as much if we had the people.
And Amanda, I might throw you again, because we chatted about this just at lunchtime. So what are some other examples of rapid upskilling programs?
So here's an example of a program we ran at Western City we called Jobs of the Future. So it's essentially making sure that girls and women didn't feel like they were missing out on what was coming. And the quickest and easiest way for them to build confidence in that was to learn the lingo, what it's about. And I'm going to shout out to TAFE, the Institute of Applied Technology, runs some really good short courses, micro-credentials, for people to upskill, feel confident enough to talk about something in an interview or even go for a job and read it. Then they'll go to the next stage, just bit by bit. So I think a lot of people think, oh, AI, it's too much for me, it's too hard. No, just do this 2-hour online thing and then do a half-day thing. And then I'm a bit like that, I'll start with the whole, why don't you just try this brochure next minute I've got you doing a master's degree. But so I'm a bit like that because the opportunities are there, but we need to gradually build that. But I've seen a rapid uptake for women and girls in Western Sydney in particular who never thought they could go for these jobs. They never thought it was for them. They said, oh, no, I'm going for this job. Actually, have you considered this? Cyber? AI? Not for me. Next minute, they're loving it. Next minute, they're going, I've gone further, Amanda, I've got this. Now we have a bunch of them got cadetships at Microsoft. Others got an internship at AMRF at the airport. So all because they had transferable skills. We've all got skills, but they added that to it and grew and then just took off.
Thank you. Kath, do you want to add?
One of the great opportunities I had was when COVID was on our doorstep back in March 2020, and I worked within workforce planning at New South Wales Health, and this is not necessarily my story to tell, but one of my colleagues realised we were crunching some numbers, and it was pretty terrifying stuff to look at how quickly we would exhaust our workforce in a number of scenarios. So one of my colleagues looked at, well, in an ICU where you have a 1-to-1 nursing to patient ratio, that was going to be a massive problem because a COVID patient needed to be turned regularly throughout the day, and because of all of the cords and things that were attached to a patient, it would take 6 people to do that. Now, if you're doing that with qualified nurses, you're quickly going to run out and not have sufficient supply. So God love Hassan Kudus, he said, see a problem. I also am responsible for allied health workforce. I see that there's lots of skill adjacencies between an allied health professional and a nurse, and I am going to look at the gap between that is required to be filled to enable an allied health professional who, mind you, had its capacity because a lot of those services closed down. So problem solving, he looked at that and then said, okay, how do I do that? We need to rapidly upskill. And literally within a week, he had close to 400 allied health professionals trained to enable them to turn over patients. And that was absolutely critical. And one of the things that really ensured that we were all as safe as possible during that period.
Phenomenal. Thanks so much. Finish us off.
Yeah, I suppose provide a bit more context from an Illawarra or Wollongong setting. One of our biggest challenges historically has been the brain drain, where we had many of our best and brightest leave the region because of the lack of opportunity. And pre-COVID, we had 25,000 people commuting to Sydney every day, for example. I think one of the things that has occurred, and I think COVID, despite its challenges, has been a blessing for many regional locations because it just proved that you could run a national or a global business from a regional location. And so I think that has really, certainly in a Wollongong context, we've got lots of businesses today running national and global businesses here from Wollongong. And and there's also a part of the university, iAccelerate, that's in its 10th year this year. I think it has made such a dramatic change, and okay, it's taken a 10-year period, but where we've got many of our best and brightest companies today who have started at iAccelerate, and just the opportunity to learn that entrepreneurialism and have mentoring and all that kind of stuff, and the support structure around to allow bright people to basically develop their own businesses and not have to leave the region. So that's been a real game changer for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think a lot of scientific people in the room, and we can have conversations about whether time's relative. I think 10 years is quick for some places and some organisations, right? They're just like, well, you only did that in 10 years, that didn't take very long at all. So thank you for that. So we've talked about some of the gaps, we talked about some of the potential rapid programs that are out there. What about how schools and industry, we've talked about it, I think it's a thread going through the whole day, of course, but what about how schools and industry can co-own the responsibility for it? Because we've had conversations about silos, we've had conversations about different, industry having their own metrics and success criteria, and schools having their own, and universities having their own, and TAFE having their own, being in silos. How can we actually work together? I'm not going to throw it to a particular person, who wants to say, how do we create some glue between those different organisations?
Okay, so I work with a lot of schools because I just want I focus on girls at Western Sydney in particular, but I just want them all to have every opportunity that they want in front of them. But what's interesting is that every school is different, and if you don't have someone in that school that wants to make change, that wants to help, a good careers advisor, a good partnerships person, unless you've got that in the school, nothing will change within that school. So you'll see, I'll have 20 schools in front of me and 10 are literally hunting me down. What have you got? What can I bring my girls? And I'm like, great, effort reward. I believe you put in the effort, I'm going to give you everything that you possibly need plus more. I think that we need to train up people that are willing to be trained at schools of the opportunities that are out there. There's a lot of extracurricular, like what I have at Western Sydney Women. We bring schools for boot camps, STEM boot camps and entrepreneurship and different things, and it's great, financial literacy boot camps, and we run them all around the state. So we need to be able to, instead of just saying, here, these great programs and schools need to do more, it'd be good to facilitate the schools that don't have the skill set, that don't know how to take the opportunity, and actually fund them, because especially state schools, and that's really what we focus on, state and Catholic schools, but the state schools fund them to say you'll have a dedicated person that goes around looking for opportunities and partners with them, because there's a lot out there. There's a lot of groups out there that are running programs that your school can take advantage of, but they're usually time-strapped, time-poor, and so we need, I do what I can to help them, but they really do need someone in there that is funded, that genuinely wants to see change at their school.
Yeah, and I think that's where the problem solving comes in, and the ability to think outside of the traditional norms that we've undertaken. I think one of the things that I would really love to see more of is what I mentioned earlier around get kids to solve problems with business and pool resources. Like we're in a really challenging economic time. I don't think we're going to get funding that we would like. I'd love to see if there's anyone in the room who has enough funding. I think we need to really work smarter. I know that's a bit of a cliche, but how do we get people to see the value in partnership, and how do we get kids then to see what learning actually achieves? And I love that reward for effort. That just makes my heart sing when I see a program where a student or a person in a workplace gets an opportunity to go and apply their passion, develop skills along the way so as they can achieve that potential, and because they're doing something meaningful that makes a difference that matters to them.
Can I just say, if you're a business and you do partner with a school or a group of young people to solve a problem, pay them for it, right? Pay them for it, because what you're doing if you don't pay them, especially young girls, you're conditioning them that they have to constantly prove themselves and solve problems for people before they're worthy enough to be paid. So whether it's a gift card or cash or whatever it is, make sure you're paying them for their brains.
I was just going to pick up on some of the themes that were coming out here as well, and say I think sometimes I speak to teachers. I look at our teachers, and so when you want to talk about how do we unlock this, they're like the classic. They've got a frame here with a harmonica on it. They're playing the guitar. They've got cymbals between their knees. They've got the drum on their back. They're trying to do so many things and have so many pressures on them from different directions. So I think one of the things that we can also do is to try and make sure that whatever we are proposing into that environment is actually unburdening the teachers from some of their existing responsibilities. And in particular here, curriculum alignment, I think, is a very easy win in this space. If you can frame, if you're a business, and I know when we've produced the Energy Future Zone exhibits that are going to be opening in a month's time, shameless plug everyone, in the science space just down the road here, they've been deliberately created to be curriculum aligned from everything from infants, primary and high school age students, so that when an excursion comes to the science space there, the teacher is actually unburdened from delivering a certain chunk of curriculum. It's not a day they have to catch up on afterwards. And so that's part of that mindset as well. I couldn't agree more with you on the paying. And I don't get economics either, because I don't understand a country where our big electricity and gas companies pay no tax and our kids have to pay for a university education. That doesn't make any sense to me either, and our high schools are under-resourced. The answer is obvious. Tax the buggers that are taking our resources and teach our people as a result. But that's what happens when you lend engineer to economics, hey?
We'll put that in the notes for the conference as well.
I just had one comment, and just from personal experience, I've got, just in terms of my own children and their experience, I've got 2 children, or 3 children at university, but one's just finished, did an engineering degree. Part of the degree had to do work experience. So basically, in last session, go off and find yourself an employer to go and do a project for. Second child at a different university. First 2 years of your degree. Third year, paid employment for a full year. The faculty of that university went out and obviously had wide industry contacts and obviously developed them. They found every student 12 months paid employment. The students worked really hard because they knew at the end of year 2 they had to go and get a paid placement. All those, 95% of those kids then got kept on. So my daughter's been working 3 days a week while finishing her 4th year of her degree. I said, there's a model, but my observation is it's not compulsory. It's just that faculty in that particular field went out and developed partnerships with industry.
In line with what I was saying earlier this morning, one thing I would challenge is, are we designing for the past, the present or the future? And I think the real challenge is designing for a future that we don't know that exists yet, but looking at the trends to understand where it's likely to be, but also having those transferable skills that are going to be able to be applied in a range of different contexts and be valuable. But then the other thing is the skill of learning. If people are able to be self-directed learners, did you want to say something? Skill of learning, empower people to do it themselves.
Hello, my name is Diane. I'm not an educator, but I am a CEO in industry, retired now, of course. But listening to you this morning, Kath, with this horizon, and I've been sitting here listening all day, and it's come to me that the horizon that we have at the moment is education is run by government, and then you've got industry. I believe, or I see as your horizon number 3, that we can get government to fund kids till they're year 7, but then turn it around and industry then sets the curriculum and funds the kids they're on into their career path. Now, I know it's way out, but that's what Horizon 3 is. And I think then the networking and the skills development right across the board will happen.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. And please, if you do have questions as we go, I'm having a ball up here, by the way, as well. So I'm just happy to keep asking questions.
Can I, something that I'll throw, well, not spanner in the works, just a different angle, and kind of talking about what we mentioned before about confidence. So I think every group of students or every group of young people I deal with are different, right? They're all so very different. And I think the biggest barrier, and it's not just children, I deal with this with adults too, the biggest barrier is their confidence, right? Now, if they don't feel confident enough, and it could be from a range of things, how they were raised, their family environment, someone could have mocked them for asking a question in class and it just shuts them down permanently. And we've got to remember that if they don't feel confident enough and secure enough to say, I'd like to know more about that, I'd like to know more about that, or I'd like to do law, or I'd like to do STEM with, and then have someone listen and have that conversation, because, the quiet ones, they kind of sit there, or the loud ones take over, but the loud ones sometimes aren't confident either. But confidence, and it's a soft skill, and I hate the term soft skill because I think it's the most important skill that we have, but confidence to be able to say, to ask questions, to learn more about different things, because then they will put their hand up for excursions, because often if we put out something, you're going to get the A student going for it, the leader, the one that's always getting those roles. And I always like to say that I want the ones that John West reject, right? I want the ones that people just overlook, that people don't consider. Like, hang on a minute, how about you? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? So I think we need to build up and speak to them and say, what would you like to do? And build up their confidence, because every child's different. Then that opportunity gap, then things can happen.
That's really like, and there's another question for the other panelists to think about, which you've already answered, which is what should we do what strategy should we deploy for marginalised groups, rather than sort of the average, or maybe what the curriculum's built for, which is that idea.
Don't give them a choice. Tell them they have to do it. So I usually go in and say, you're coming, I don't want to do it. And I'm like, you're doing it. End of story. And at the end of it, they're like, oh my God, it was great.
So it's like a forceful advocate.
It is, I am a forceful advocate, everybody. But also a buddy system. So what I try and do is I try and encourage the confident ones to grab someone. I said, who do you think, that you can speak up on behalf of, or who can you bring along with that journey? I do it with corporate workshops. Ask the quiet one in the meeting what their idea is, and then you're helping them as well as helping yourself.
My observation is you've got to invest substantial amounts of time. It's a long conversation. It's not about trying to have one workshop where you convince anyone of their ability to pursue a career in STEM, or that they can do it, the see it to be it, etc. It's a longer journey, and it's a softer journey. Some of the things that I've experienced and that I see is it's got to be done with exposure over time and with a campaign rather than fly in, fly out. We had a workshop, tick the box, fantastic, at a particular school. You've got to build those relationships over the long term. And people then, with that familiarity, create a sense of comfort, if you like. I'm lacking the book learning for the language and all this. The social scientists who I work with are cringing visibly, I'm sure. But with that familiarity then comes real engagement, and people sort of, being able to relate and take it forward from there. And yes, the ultimate, see it to be it. You need to get people of diverse backgrounds in front of students and talking about their own life's journey in a one-to-one sense, so that people can see that it is possible. A lot of the mentorship, I was very fortunate, I think, like many others on the panel here, early on in my life and career I had people who would actively encourage me, and what that meant was when I encountered later on people that said, no, you can't do that, something, screw you, I'm doing it, just because you say I can't. But that's an attitude that I think takes time to build and takes a confidence, and you've got to be able to have those long-ranging relationships and conversations to do it.
I believe that telling people they can be and do whatever they want as long as they're willing to put in the work. Because I think a lot of people underestimate how much work's involved in activities, and to encourage that, any interest, encourage it. I remember my niece, when she was about 5, she said she wanted to be a doctor. So I bought her a little doctor's kit, wrapping my arm. She's now studying medicine, right? But I encouraged her and said, you can do it, but it's going to be a lot of work, right? But then I have other people that say, oh no, I think I've blown it, because they bombed in the HSC or they quit school, mid-year 11. And I said, no, you can do whatever you want. Again, it's going to be hard work, but there are other avenues. And I've worked with a lot of teenage girls in particular that have quit school because of bullying or other issues. And I said, let's map out a pathway to what you want. So there's literally, these days, there are so many avenues to get to where you want, but the key is the hard work. You've got to be willing to put in the hard work, because social media is convincing everyone that everything's easy and you don't have to do much, and people lie and they go, look how easy this was. It's not true. So we need to remind people it is hard work, but here's the pathway, here's the map to get there.